Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. We'll be talking today about the impending tropical cyclone known as Biparjoy, which according to the Minister for Climate Change in Pakistan, Ms. Sherry Rahman, is going to hit Sindh's Keti Bandar at 11 in the morning tomorrow. Now, she was addressing a press conference and she also told that around 66,000 people have been evacuated to safer places from the vulnerable areas, and she has also urged the people to cooperate with the authorities when it comes to the evacuation process. She specifically has mentioned 4 areas including Thatta, Sujawal, Badin and Tharparkar. These districts will be hit the hardest while the cyclone is moving away from Karachi. Now, the Pakistan Meteorological Department says the cyclone is currently at a distance of 370 kilometers from Karachi. It also says maximum sustained service winds are 150 to 160 kilometers per hour. Gusts are 180 kilometers per hour around the system center. And it also has said that the cyclone is likely to cross between Sindh's Keti Bandar and Indian Gujarat state on June the 15th. Now, with the packing winds of 120 to 140 kilometers per hour. Minister for Climate Change, Sherry Rahman, earlier addressed the National Assembly, informed the National Assembly about the preparations the government authorities have taken in order to deal with the situation that is developing because of this impending tropical cyclone Biparjoy. And she also informed that 75 relief camps have been established where the people have from the vulnerable areas have been shifted. Meanwhile, we have also seen Chairman NDMA, Lieutenant General Inam Haider Malik, has said that preparations are complete in view of the cyclone. He said Pakistan Army and Rangers have shifted a large number of people to the relief camps. Earlier, we saw Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif chair a high-level meeting and also formed a committee to monitor the developments regarding Cyclone Biparjoy under the supervision of Climate Change Minister Ms. Sherry Rahman. And he also instructed the concerned authorities to remain vigilant and ensure the timely evacuation of the people from the vulnerable areas. Also establish mobile hospitals to deal with any untoward situation, and also ensure the supply of clean drinking water and food to the displaced people in the camps. Let's straight away jump into the discussion about what kind of risk and a threat this particular tropical cyclone Biparjoy poses, especially to the coastal areas of Pakistan. To understand that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Ghulam Rasool. He is former Director General, Pakistan Meteorological Department. Currently, he is the head of Climate Change Program of International Union for Conservation of Nature in Pakistan. Dr. Ghulam Rasool, thank you very much for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. We are also honored to have been joined by Dr. Ejaz Ahmad. He is an environmentalist. Dr. Ejaz Ahmad, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Ghulam Rasool. When we talk about the stats which have been shared by Pakistan Meteorological Department, what's your understanding about the severity of this particular tropical cyclone?
Thank you very much. This is first seasonal tropical cyclone in the Arabian Sea, and now it has gained its highest intensity. Tomorrow it will start weakening, and while weakening it will make a landfall between Keti Bandar and Rajasthan coast of India, and then its intensity will gradually be weakening after landfall.
Right, Dr. Ejaz Ahmad, what's your understanding about the severity of this particular tropical cyclone, given the facts which have been shared by Pakistan Met Department?
Yeah, as Dr. Ghulam Rasool mentioned, I think it is quite severe in a sense that this is the first in this season, and then we hope that during the monsoon season things will be in a better condition. But I feel that various departments, including NDMA, they took very quick actions and were able to inform, provide early warning systems to the people. That is why we don't have that kind of casualties which a cyclone of this intensity normally does.
So, Dr. Ejaz Ahmad, what do you understand of this particular statement by the Pakistan Met Department that says that favorable environmental conditions, sea surface temperature of 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, low vertical wind shear and upper level divergence are in support to sustain the cyclone strength through the forecast period?
Yeah, I think this is a regular phenomena where most of the cyclones normally occur due to this the change in the temperature and the warm air and then cold air compensation, and then the wind velocity. So these are some of the factors which actually are responsible for creating for formation of such event like cyclones. And ultimately it is expected that during this heat wave, during the hot weather, things will see maybe few more such events. And Dr. Ghulam Rasool is in a better position to actually.
So, Dr. Ghulam Rasool, what's your understanding? Do these such type of tropical cyclones do usually occur in this particular region, specifically when we talk about the Arabian Sea, and how frequently they affect the coastal areas of Pakistan in particular?
Let me give you a background of tropical cyclones in this area. There are two basins for South Asia, Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. Arabian Sea was not a very active basin. 2 decades ago, there were 2 or 3 tropical cyclones in a decade. But now, every year, 1 to 3 tropical cyclones are forming. This is because of climate change, global warming. This sea surface temperature is also increasing as land surface temperature is increasing. Due to increase in sea surface temperature, now more tropical cyclones are forming over the waters of Arabian Sea. And these conditions which Pakistan Meteorological Department has narrated, these are basic conditions for the formation of a tropical cyclone and its development into a severe tropical cyclone. This tropical cyclone has gained the intensity up to category 3 because sustained winds were more than 150 km per hour when it was 400 km away from the coast of Pakistan.
So, right, Dr. Ghulam Rasool, you already mentioned that there are 2 belts in this region, Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. Arabian Sea was not that much of an active belt regarding the formation of the tropical cyclones. Do you associate climate change that is happening the world over that has to deal with the frequent formation of tropical cyclones over here in this already which was not active?
Yeah, this is a result of climate change. Because sea surface temperature is increasing. While sea surface temperature is increasing, low pressure areas are forming over the surface of sea. So that is giving some potential energy, which is then converted into kinetic energy for the formation of tropical cyclones. And these low pressure areas, when they converge, they give lot of strength to the formed already mature tropical cyclone. In this basin, in South Asian basins, this is known as tropical cyclone. When we move to the Pacific, Western Pacific is terming it as typhoon, and along the coast of United States, that is hurricane. And you have seen over the last 10, 12 years that every season hurricane or typhoon or tropical cyclones are gaining energy. They are more intense as compared to the previous. So this energy is fed to these water storms because of global warming.
Right, Dr. Ejaz,
I would like to add that if you see the history over a period of last maybe 50 years or so, the number of cyclones and the intensity of cyclones were very low. But with the passage of time, these cyclones, the frequency of cyclones and the intensity of cyclones are increasing. As Dr. Saab mentioned earlier, that I think there was a time when in a decade you will hear maybe one or two cyclones from the coast of Pakistan, Balochistan as Sindh coast. But now every year one or two medium to strong cyclones have actually started appearing, and because of the phenomena that Dr. Saab has just mentioned. And global warming is playing a very important role in it because of the change in the temperature. Overall, if we see, although during the previous few weeks, the overall temperature in Islamabad was also very strange, in a sense that we were having 18-20 degrees centigrade in Islamabad during end of May and early June, which is basically very strange behavior. And now it has gone up to 40. So all of a sudden within 5 to 10 days, the temperature has variation is very, actually there is a big gap between the temperatures that we see.
So Dr. Ejaz, that necessarily increases the vulnerability of Pakistan when it comes to its coastal areas in particular, with the intensity and the frequency of these tropical cyclones increasing because of the global warming. Is that so?
Well, vulnerability is of course increasing because there is there are many habitations. If you move from Karachi towards the eastern side, Thatta, Gharo, Kharochan, Keti Bandar, Shah Bandar, all these and there is very little connection, because once like it's a high tide, so they cut from the main road, the access to communication is very scanty. So it is of course it increases the vulnerability of the communities who are actually living in those areas. And these people have no other option to live over there, because their profession is fishing, and they have to be there. They are there for centuries. Some of them are living there, I mean, like maybe fifth or sixth.
Of these cyclones have a direct impact on the livelihood of the fishermen.
Of course, yes, yeah. They do have, because the fishermen cannot go into the for fishing, and then their life is at risk. Their boats, their property, that is all at risk. And I think that as you just said, the vulnerability, they are already vulnerable in a sense that they used to get fresh water of Indus River, and they will grow some agriculture crops as well. Rice, they call it red rice, which was one of the major crop in that area. That the water is not, because of the scarcity of water upstream, the water is not coming, and they cannot grow the crops, especially the rice. And ultimately, if then they are dependent on the fishing, but because of these events, they cannot go and get the fish.
So they're facing challenges on two fronts at the same time.
Extremely challenging, yeah.
Dr. Ghulam, Rasool, the vulnerability of Pakistan, is it increasing day by day with more intensity and the frequency of these tropical cyclones, especially when we talk about the coastal areas?
Yes, vulnerability of coastal population is very clear now, because more and more tropical cyclones are forming. Even if they form in Bay of Bengal, they travel westward, they cross Indian Peninsula, they dissipate for some time, and then they are reactivated when they enter in Arabian Sea. And Arabian Sea itself is also the birthplace of tropical cyclones. And these tropical cyclones, fortunately, they have not frequently tracked into Pakistan. They are just moving parallel to the coast of Pakistan, and then they enter Indian part. But this will not be the all-time story of future. They will be recurving, they will be changing their track, and Pakistani coastline will be highly vulnerable.
That's also a novel phenomenon?
Yeah. This is happening all over the world.
So
Yeah.
regaining the speed and the strength and also dissipating at times and again
Yeah.
getting that one. So that's a novel phenomenon. With
Yeah, it happens. It happens, and now this is the time of action for the government of Pakistan and Pakistani people living along the coast. We should develop resilience, and that resilience will matter for a long, long time. Dr. Ejaz mentioned about the storm surges. Storm surges are getting more intense, and they are bringing seawater into the land area. We have creeks along the coast, and those creeks are also channelizing seawater, intruding into the fertile land. And due to that fertile land under saline water, brackish water, they cannot drink that water, they cannot grow their crops, they cannot use that water for feeding the animals. So they are forced to migrate from that place. There are measures we can discuss.
Yeah, we'll be discussing those measures later in the show. What about their occurrence? Do they usually happen during or around the monsoon season, or can they occur any time around the year?
There are two seasons of tropical storms. They are hurricanes, they are typhoons, or they are tropical cyclones. First one is early summer, May, June, and second one is post-monsoon. That is September, October. So these are the two seasons of these tropical storms. Otherwise, during the monsoon season, the sea surface temperature of water cools down. Therefore, these tropical cyclones are not formed over the surface.
So out of these two seasons, which gets the more severe storms?
The first one, early summer.
Early summer.
When
so
heating
this
starts.
storm that we are specifically talking about is an early summer storm?
Yeah.
Right. Dr. Ejaz, Ahmad, your understanding regarding this?
Well, I think it's we have already seen that these cyclones, especially before summer cyclones, they are increasing. After like monsoon, temperature normally remains a bit constant, not to that level, but the extremes are less as compared to what we see during before summer starts, and that is what happened during this time as well. I mean, like as I mentioned earlier, the temperature throughout, I mean, like there were a hailstorm in Multan. So the temperature throughout Pakistan during these time remain quite low. I think if we see average, maybe 4 or 5 degrees.
What was basically the reason behind that?
I think it's just that the summer season came a bit late, and we were getting rain on regular basis.
Also, by the way, a novel phenomenon. Frequency of hailstones seemed quite increased this time around. No.
Well, it varies from area to area. I was just going to quote you what happened last year. March, April, and May were the hottest months last year in Pakistan, and this year I mean, like it was totally opposite to that we were getting more rains, we were getting more actually every week there was some rain, we were getting more hailstorm, and the crops got damaged, people got injured, and then property got actually damaged. So there were actually more variation during this season as compared to just a comparison of last year.
Right, Dr. Ghulam, so last summer we saw devastating floods of 2022, the economic losses of around $30 billion. A lot of people lost their lives, many were displaced. That was what we witnessed last year. This time around there is another challenge from the coastal side, and both of them have to do with the global warming or the climate change. Now, in these circumstances, what should be the level of the preparedness? What ideally should be done in order to deal with climatic um, occurrences that are happening so frequently for Pakistan?
I think every disaster has different response. For tropical cyclones, I think we should think about our strategy immediately, because there is no time. This, as I mentioned, this is time of action. First, all the infrastructure which is developing along the coast, that should be tropical cyclone resilient. That should sustain winds up to 300 kilometer per hour, and that should sustain the rain of cloudburst intensity. So this is must to survive along the coast. And also there are biotechnological measures like population of mangroves. Mangroves planted by WWF, Dr. Ejaz, first previous department, and IUCN Pakistan. They have made a lot of effort to increase the population of mangroves. Mangroves are the plants which can survive in brackish water, and they can reduce the intensity of storm surges which are intruding seawater into the land area. And then there is a large potential of palm plantation along the coast, which has not yet been harnessed by Pakistan. Otherwise, that can play a very important role in our economic conditions, and also the windbreaks against the stormy winds of tropical cyclones.
Right, these measures that you've just mentioned, of course, they've got some economic dividend also. Now, they also require a huge cost. Do you think, in how much time do you think these measures can be implemented?
I think gradually, if we start, for example, mangrove plantation, so they are at the same time growing mangrove nurseries along with. So they are transplanting that nursery plants where they are required along the coast. So this is gradual process. If we and those plants will not mature to mature trees immediately. They will take time, but we should take first step. Palm plantation, that will be beneficial, and that will also take some time. But according to the legislation, the buildings should be constructed along the coast. They should be resilient to wind, resilient to stormy rain.
Right, Dr. Ejaz, you
yeah,
just want
I think it's very important to have smart early warning systems, because evacuation is very difficult. In a sense, people, you have to grab them out of their houses, even at this time. You remember last year what happened, that in Nowshera, in Charsadda, the district management actually they themselves went home to home, and then they were able to find people still sitting over there, although rainwater and then flood was entering into those areas. So I think early warning system and then evacuation plan is a must, that if something happens to this community, where they will go. As Dr. Sam mentioned about
the evacuations at this point in history, when we talk about coping up with these type of storms, do evacuations happen to be the first line of defense for us?
Well, I think with this intensity, if the direction of cyclone remains as such, so the intensity of water coming into the houses, into the villages, will be very strong winds, and then ultimately it will be very difficult for people to move. So I think unless we have some evacuation plan, and we know that where these people, where they will go, and what are the, say if there are schools, if there are mosques, if there are health centers which are purpose fully built, Then I also would like to mention about the mangrove, because that is, I think, first line of defense, wind breaker, and they are natural barrier. And what we are doing in most of the places, that in order to build the industry, in order to build the like various projects, we are cutting these mangroves, and ultimately we are not cutting mangroves, we are actually destroying the first line of defense against these cyclones. And those areas, there are studies and there are observations, those areas where there were mangrove forests, the village remained intact. There was hardly any damage to property, hardly any damage to people, and like to their lives. So we need to understand nature-based solutions are more important and more dependable, more sustainable. So I think this is something which we need to promote again and again.
Right. This time around, as you already mentioned, the government has taken stringent measures beforehand.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
All the concerned departments, the government authorities, including the federal government, the provincial government, as well as the NDMA, the PDMA, including the institutions, the armed forces, the rangers, the PMD also. They've been quite vigilant right beforehand.
Yes.
So what's your understanding? Isn't the work that has been done so far commendable?
Of course, I think in the beginning I mentioned that the early warning system was quite useful, in a sense that we have not heard any major casualties yet. So, and that the intensity of cyclone, as Dr. Saab mentioned, is also reducing now. So we can safely say that maybe we are now safer as compared to what we were thinking 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and it is because of the advisory which were given by the government departments. The early warning systems were provided to a district level, to the village level, and that is one of the reasons that we see things went smoothly during this cyclone.
Right, Dr. Ghulam, Rasool, the efficacy of this early warning system, and a huge effort has been already put in by the authorities. Around 66,000 people have been evacuated from the vulnerable areas to the safer places. Your understanding, sir?
Yeah, I appreciate this sort of coordination among different institutions at province level, at federal level. And that should further strengthen, I think. There should be identified shelter homes, like if the people will be evacuated and they will be staying in a school or in other government building. Those buildings should be strong enough.
Yes.
They should sustain the disaster parameters, and also at the same time the people should be encouraged. People should not be panicked. People should think about that this is the storm and we have to face it, and face it while cooperating among each other. Sometimes some negative things happen. When there was 2005 earthquake, there were people who were stealing the things of others. When they left their homes, those people were they created mess. So like that, for every disaster, when evacuation takes place, then there should be some ikhlaqiyat also behind.
So of course the government authorities ensure the safety of the property that is left behind by the people who have been evacuated. That was exactly the point that I was coming on. Dr. Ejaz, what happens to be the responsibility? As you already mentioned, we saw last year in summer, the people were adamant not to leave their places. So this time around, the government has been repeatedly issuing the advisories to take this particular thing very seriously, that a cyclone Biparjoy is real and it might have dire consequences. So they must be cooperating with the authorities. But we have seen instances, since Chief Minister Murad Ali Shah also has said the people who are resisting to get evacuated would be forcibly evacuated.
I think they should be, because life is very important, and then ultimately the family is going to suffer. In Sindh, normally what happened that during this cyclone season, fishermen, they go for fishing. They don't stop, and they have to actually by force they have to stop. And now there is a system where I think they have their own community-based organization. They have their own mechanism, networking. So they try to put social pressure, and then ultimately then the number of boats going inside for shikar, for fishing, have reduced tremendously. And I was watching a report, and actually the local communities, they themselves with the help of each other, they were able to conduct such events where they were able to convince these fishermen. And I think one important aspect that we need to emphasize is preparedness for such event should be throughout the year. It should not be event based, it should not be one off thing. We should keep these communities informed about about disaster, whether it's cyclone, whether it's rain, whether it's any other heat wave. Even then, I think we need to make them understand that what kind of precautionary measures they need to take in order to protect themselves, in order to protect their livelihood, their family, their kids. That is what happened in Bangladesh. They were able to actually reduce the mortality because of such events by providing regular training, providing regular refresher courses to the community about evacuation, about whatever the disaster they are going to face, how they will cope with that, and that is very important.
Right, Dr. Ghulam Rasool, once the cyclone has made the landfall, it has had the impact with the land. What are the major do's for the general public?
Well, after landfall, its intensity will gradually weaken, and it will, but 24 hours or 36 hours, it will be giving stormy rain and very strong winds. Wind speed will reduce gradually, but for 36 hours, that will be very, very crucial. Fortunately, after landfall in 24 hours, it will leave Pakistan territory. It will enter into Indian part, and that will be producing a lot of rainfall in third desert and windy conditions also.
So what about the do's and the don'ts in the urban areas?
In urban areas, there will be urban flooding because torrential rain that will occur, and weak buildings which are double story, triple story, those can collapse also. The residents should be very careful about these things, and even the local authorities, they should take care of such areas. Low-lying areas, there will be stagnancy of water, and that stagnancy of water can also result into collapse of buildings. So that should be taken care of. Otherwise, there should be post-disaster exercise. There should be some analysis that what measures we have taken and how successful they were, what to do in addition to that. So there will be some corrective measures also, and awareness of the people, that is very, very important. Dr. Ejaz mentioned about the throughout the year preparation, but at least we should do some mock exercises before the onset of the season, onset of tropical cyclone season. There should be some mock exercises, then the people will be taking ownership and people will be activated. Now there are local governments, and local governments connect the people in a better way.
Right, Dr. Ejaz Ahmad, what are the major do's and don'ts when the cyclone makes a landfall, especially when we talk about the urban areas?
Yeah, I think they need to have a survival kit where they need to. I think water is the most important thing, because the source of water will be, of course, contaminated, and then it will be very difficult to get stuff which is available. Perishable things will be like not dependable and reliable. So I think the important thing is to understand that this is going to happen and it will remain for a few days. It is not going to go, say, within half a day or one day. But not only for themselves, but also for their neighborhood. They need to prepare themselves, and they need to have these survival kits, whether it's in the form of medicine, whether it's in the form of food, whether it's in the form of water, or even shelter. So I think there is a need to identify certain these things, and keeping in mind that I'm not only the one who is going to suffer. Maybe there will be few more people who are going to be dependent on us.
So when it comes to the transmission lines, the electricity poles, what about them? How to take precaution regarding those?
Well, I think that that is something which is very alarming, in a sense that during the normal days, without any disaster, people do get electrocuted, or they get currents. I think they should keep themselves away from any such installation, because you never know, anything is possible, and it is very risky. And there are many mortalities which has happened during the normal days because of this. And although the power company KESC, K Electric, is doing their best, but still I think there is much more to do.
Right. Dr. Ghulam Rasool, when we talk about panic, how big is this particular phenomenon an enemy when such a natural occurrence happens?
Yeah, this is very dangerous disaster, and this creates disruption in the usual life, because the wind is not imaginable. That is the highest speed of wind, along with the rainfall, and rainfall is so strong sometimes, like cloudburst. In just a few minutes, there will be tens of millimeters of rainfall that will be falling. So a panic is quite natural, but if we remain associated with the people, and we prepare them. Dr. Ejaz quoted the example of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is most vulnerable country for tropical cyclones. Every year, 4 or 5 tropical cyclones, they are invading their territory. But those coastal people, they have learned how to live with these tropical cyclones. Likewise, we should also prepare our people that how to live with these disasters in future. These disasters will be our enemies. We have to do some friendship with them.
Right. Dr. Ejaz Ahmad, can panic be more damaging as compared to the actual natural disaster happening at that moment?
Yes, it can actually. I think that is one of the reasons when I said that throughout the year they need to get trained, because the more they learn, the more they understand about, and then they will be more confident about evacuation, about their kids, about their property, and there will be chances of less panic. And many actually incidences happened where the disaster was not that much, but due to panic, people, they were able to, there were more mortalities, there were more actually disaster as compared to the real disaster. So people have to be very calm. It's very difficult. It's easy to say, but I think with the regular training, with proper training, I think these things will be inculcated into their normal behavior.
And I think this should become the part of syllabi of primary school syllabus. Like tropical cyclones along the coast, this is the #1 disaster. And in mountainous areas where glaciers are, Ghulam is the most dangerous phenomenon. In that area, what we are teaching the children at primary level, that they should be taught about these disasters. They should know about these disasters and how to live with these disasters.
Right, Dr. Ghulam, so one last question regarding Pakistan's responsibility and the international community's responsibility. Since Pakistan, as you all both gentlemen have mentioned, that Pakistan is becoming more prone and vulnerable to these climatic occurrences that are happening so frequently. We saw the devastating floods of summer 2022. Pakistan contributes only less than 1% of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, yet has to bear the brunt of the developed countries. That is what has been also highlighted by the United Nations Secretary General also. So now when we talk about installing the climate resilient infrastructure to deal with these tropical cyclones, has Pakistan to do it alone by itself? Or do you think the international community has got the responsibility to help Pakistan out to install such resilient infrastructure along the coastal lines in particular?
Yeah, there are some funding opportunities also, and those funding opportunities can be utilized for developing resilience against different disasters, because Pakistan is a laboratory of disasters. You name any disaster in the world, you will find in Pakistan in some climatic zone. So Pakistan should try to get the funding from like Global Adaptation Fund, Green Climate Fund. So these are the funds which are supporting countries which are developing resilience, and technical support can also be hired from the international expertise and local expertise.
Dr. Ejaz Ahmad, do you see international help coming regarding Pakistan's vulnerability to these climatic events?
I think we need it is not going to come. We need to actually ask for it. And there are two important aspects which we need to look. One is technology, and the other one is capacity. I think if we get the technology, if we build the capacity of our human resources, we will be in a better position to actually adopt according to the situation of Pakistan. And otherwise, if we just think that okay, they should come here and do something for us, so it is, I mean, like maybe they'll come and they'll do it, but then ultimately next year something happens, we are going to ask them again. So we need to build our own capacity, strengthen our human resources in various technologies related to any disaster.
By the way, the United Nations Secretary General said it is not, it is the matter of climate justice.
Yes.
So the world needs to pay for that in form of reparations to Pakistan also.
We need to actually, you know, like do our effort, do our lobby. It is very political as well. Do that. But in addition to that, I think we need to look into these aspects related to technology and related to the training and building the capacity of the local expertise.
Dr. Ejaz Ahmad, the environmentalist, thank you very much for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Dr. Ghulam Rasool, former Director General, Pakistan Meteorological Department, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Now, in view of this tropical cyclone Biparjoy, the government authorities are making an utmost effort to protect the lives and the properties of the people. All the people at large need to do is to cooperate with the government authorities and not panic at all, and just follow the advisories the government authorities are issuing repeatedly. With that note, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.